Hey, everybody, and welcome back to The Fearless Artist. My name is Michelle Lynn, and I'm your host of this podcast. And today I'm very pleased to have my new friend, Emily Callison-Dulce, on. Hi, Emily. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
So we connected on Instagram, where I find all my new friends, and I was interested in talking to you because you are the director of the French Connection Academy. You're a classical violinist. You're also doing project management, and you work together with your husband. So I'm looking forward to getting into your story and learning about what you guys do more today.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So do you want to start with a little bit about your training and how you started the French Connection and what it actually is?
Yeah. I have a master's in classical violin that I took in Copenhagen and also 1 year in Paris.
Where you are now, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I live
Yeah.
here with my husband. And then I made this academy called French Connection Academy because I live in France, I'm Danish, and then it's built on these French and Danish values
Yes.
in order to provide educational support for developing young talent between 14 years old and 32. So it's a very large bridge building between generations. It's made to create some more holistic support for classical young musicians because recently found a nice sentence that I feel resonates very well with me, which is I don't think we are all made to be the biggest soloist name in the world, but we can all become great artists. Finding our way, finding how we function best and where we are the most happy and where we have the most fun. So this academy is made for all classical musicians wanting to be professional.
Okay, that's beautiful. Tell me more about the Danish-French connection. Are you specifically targeting those two countries, those two nationalities?
It's completely global, like
Mm-hmm.
anyone can apply. It's just more that the values of the academy is kind of reflecting these kind of schools and thinkings. Like the Danish culture is very, very social. Nobody is left alone.
Okay,
It's a
okay.
small country. We try to take care of each other, and
Yeah.
we're known for a lot of trusts, which is quite unique, I think. The more I travel, the more I see is something very unique for the country.
Hmm.
So we try to and put this forward. And then, of course, France is one of the biggest schools of culture somehow. You know, we're one of the biggest exporters of culture. And I think it's super interesting to see how they make crazy big classical festivals. And I think we can really learn how to sell culture from France. So there's a lot of good things. And of course, there's also a really interesting culture in Denmark.
You're combining the cultural values and heritage of
Yes,
France with this, I'm hearing, trust, openness community of
yes,
Denmark.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. So you did your master's in Copenhagen, and then you said you studied 1 year in Paris?
Yes, my last
Okay,
year of
so you,
master's.
okay, so you got to see already in your studies maybe some of these values coming in through the pedagogy, or how was that for you?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest difference between the two was maybe the size somehow. Like, well, it's both big schools, but being in a bigger country, I kind of found myself in a bigger country in the way that I could explore my role. Like,
Mm-hmm.
somehow being in a small country, you can very fast become that person that has this kind of set of values and is like that and who has these kind of friends. And the moment that I moved to another country, I kind of found my feet to stand on. And I think that's kind of also one of the big things I bring with this academy is this exchange, which I found endlessly like there's endless amount of resources in doing some cultural exchange. And then the personal point, like the reason why France Denmark is of course also my husband is French, and in this case we can really melt together our network. We can really make a lot of things with that. So it also has this kind of personal.
Interesting that you felt more like boxed into a certain role, as you're saying in Denmark, like people associate you more quickly.
Mm.
Do you think that's because people like to label each other or put them in like, okay, you belong here, and now everybody has a place? Or you said you found your feet in France. I'd love for you to talk more about like what did you discover?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's like I think it's a small country thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically the environment is small, and then if you grew up in one city playing a classical instrument, you will know everyone who plays a classical instrument, and the chance of having gone the same places and known each other since you were 11 years old or seven
Yeah.
years old is just very high.
Yeah.
So I think it's more that.
I think the music world is small in general too. I mean, Canada's a huge country, but the music world is small, so you just know everyone who's playing, and
Of
even as we
course.
all spread out and came to Europe, you still find people that like where they ended up.
Yeah, and it has a lot of beauty to it as well because everyone is evolving and changing with time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes moving to another country to dare, stepping out.
Okay, so how did you dare to step out?
Well, actually, a lot of it is meeting my husband, actually. He was a bit like, I was on my way to Poland in the first.
Jean-Baptiste.
Jean-Baptiste
Jean-Baptiste Doucet.
Doucet.
Yeah. Maybe some people here know him.
Yeah, it could be. Could be.
Yeah.
Well, he's a pianist. We met each other and I was on my way to Poland and he was a bit like, well, have you thought about applying in Paris? And I was like, do you think I can do that? Am I good enough?
So you went to
Yeah.
Saint Sam, you had a good experience.
I had a great experience because like every meeting with the teacher is always interesting, but every teacher bring different things depending on where we are also. So I was in a moment where I really needed somebody to believe enough that I could learn everything I had to learn. Like I often have considered myself being a little bit behind on technical aspects, and I've never been very Paganini violinist. It's never really been my thing. And violin as an instrument, I don't know why the repertoire is like that, but there's so much crazy stuff we have to be able to play on this wooden instrument.
Yeah.
And it's amazing as well. It's just that, that's also one of the things for my academy. Sometimes there's a little tendency in the classical world, I feel in general, that if somebody is not just moving, thriving, developing by themselves, being super active and just, rolling with the punches, then if there's somebody who's a bit struggle or a little bit closed or not knowing really how to, like, it's very easy to avoid learning or avoid playing concerts or avoid getting yourself out there because the environment is not going to help you necessarily in the schools to really face these things. And so I made a French Connection Academy because I was very insecure and I needed a little bit somebody to say, what do you want to do? How can I help you? This might be good for you, And then I went to CNSM and I had a teacher who was like, but this is your level. You have to be able to do this. Let's go. No complicated, she's a bit fragile or something. It was just pure formation, education, like, dick. No scare, let's just work. And it was a liberation for me, actually.
Wow. Yeah, that rational, like, here's the level, we need to get you to this level without it sounding like it didn't come in and touch your identity or touch shame. There was no shame on you for not being at the high level, but then you could work to that level.
Exactly.
I know for me too, I also had so much insecurity, and I think my teacher also like stripped me down and built me back up, but I'm not sure that it didn't touch my identity. I think it always did. Until years after I left school, and I had to kind of undo, like, wait, I need to stop associating myself with how good I am, or if I feel good enough, or I had a few rejections that like really crushed me. So I think that identity is so important that we can hear, like, okay, this is an objective work. Like, we just need to do the work.
It's craftsmanship. It's building a table.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice if we could demystify classical music a little bit, and then be like, there are things you learn, technique, how to do physically, like how to play a scale of thirds and how to apply it well, and why do we do this? And if you cannot do it, well, then learn from what you do well and how to apply that into the techniques that is scary for you to go into, these kind of things. A bit more easygoing, low practical work, letting students find their identity, like supporting, trying new things. But it's just, every student is so different and we all need different things. Some students thrive super well under a very strict old school structure, and other students need a little bit more talk, more different angles of looking at challenges. And I think the classical environment is on its way to embrace these things more. On our academy, for example, we really try to create an environment that is safe for people to face also some of their maybe insecurities that keeps them from moving or be active.
Yeah. I think there's so much that's emotional in our playing, in the interpretation, in the communication. And so I think we bring that into the technique aspect, as you're saying, that like, oh, your technique is poor, and then instantly it's like you're not good enough. There's all this emotion that comes in.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to try and kind of separate that. How have you brought that into the French Academy? And I'm also curious why such a wide age range from 14 to 32, because those are like
Yeah.
opposite ends of the spectrum. And just for clarity, it's a week program in the summer.
It's from the 1st to 6th of July for the moment.
Okay.
We would like to expand to 1st of 10th of July so we can also have like chamber music. Well, we try to remove the responsibility of the personal development from the professors. And then we put it over on a trust person that we have there that has some background, some capacity to like some real human resource capacity to really work. So our students can go and talk to this trust person if they have some kind of insecurities, problems, or like we can all be in a bad moment of life and then we need somebody to talk to unload that on. And so we create a space where people can go with that to someone. And then even if we have like an injury, we take care of these kind of things. Like last year, we also had an osteopath that was there that just gave free treatments. And that also means that even if you, for example, you signed up for the academy, a week before you have like an injury or a pain that makes it not possible for you to play, well, that doesn't mean that you cannot be a part of our academy. It means you come with whatever you have, and then you can also simply use it to go and listen to lessons, be there, be part of the community, get treatments, and heal together, you know, instead of isolating yourself until you're good again with your injury and keeping it a secret, nobody should know. And, you know, because it can happen for anyone to have pains. And classical musicians, what is the statistics again about orchestral musicians and pains? It's like
I
super
heard
high.
85% of musicians get injured.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was when I was in university. They taught us that in school. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. It sounds like you're trying to create like a whole environment for the artist to come in and thrive, not just getting the lessons.
Yeah, we have opportunities because we really believe that the only way you really learn how to be a musician is also to have the practical experience and to build that. It's not something like standing on a huge stage playing a big program of 1 hour in front of thousands of people. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens with building the experience of smaller stages and little by little building that kind of capacity. So we provide a lot of opportunities and different festivals with different partners, different sizes of stages also. So there's ready for those that has built it up a bit more shoulders to carry it. And then we also have smaller stages for those who needs to take the first steps into it or have maybe some more problems with the nervosity on stage. So there's a bit of something for everyone. And we have, last year we gave prizes to about 42
So the prizes
students.
are performances after the festival, is that correct?
Yeah, like in the
Okay,
year
nice.
after, in different places in Denmark and France, Sweden, Francophone countries as well.
You're in the third year of the festival, and how many participants are you having? And also coming back to that age gap, like are they working together? Are they separate?
Well, everyone have their solo lessons during the day, but all lessons are open for students to go in and listen and to be there and observe. The youngest students come with the parents, so the ones who are below 16, and between 16 to 18, we have them in a house with the trust person of the academy, and the rest is like living together in Airbnbs. So we really try to make sure that everything is going on in a good, safe way. And well, the age gap is there because when you're very young, you can see where you can go. And the fact that you're in contact or at least eating food together with these older students makes it, I think, less far away. And for older students, it's a huge gift to see how much you accomplished. Like when you look at a 14-year-old and you see, wow, okay, I did a lot of work actually. So it can really create a lot of gratitude, I think. It's very important. And in the end, when we are out on the market after the conservatory, we will most likely play with musicians that are not all just our own age. And if you sit in an orchestra, there will also be age gaps.
It sounds like you're reflecting the values of community in this, where they can learn from each other and kind of
Yeah.
share experiences and spark conversations.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that surprised you this is the third year of the festival. So when you were coming up with the idea, the conception story, what was challenging for you? What took you by surprise?
Well, in the beginning, making this project, I had, I'm somebody who starts with big dreams. I'm like, I want this and that. And I'm not scared to call somebody I don't know and say, hey, would you like to lend us your house for free for this amazing project? But in the end, we end up being a bit all over this third biggest city in Denmark called Odense.
Okay.
It's quite perfect because we have the symphony orchestra. They lend us their practice rooms and their canteen.
Okay.
We have the city halls, beautiful old concert hall. And then we have the music school that lent us the whole building. And this year we'll also have a school lending us some more practice rooms for the students. So there's like, in the end, it's like we pay almost nothing for renting of places. And the city is super happy to have us there. It's a great relationship we have with the symphony orchestra and with, everyone working in culture in the city.
So you started with the minimum viable festival, and then how did you manage to grow over the next, second edition and now this coming third edition?
Well, we have grown in the way that the first edition there were 36 students and there were 6 teachers. Second, we added a class, so we had 7 teachers, and then we could fill all our classes with the 42 students. We are still waiting to adding the days, but this year we prioritized to, for example, have a safer economy in a way, like to make sure that everyone, that means myself, my husband, and our third founder, that we can really get our salary paid this year, because building something takes time and you cannot expect to be paid always the first years of building a company.
Yeah, right. I mean, for everyone listening, Deanna and I didn't pay ourselves from TFA for the first 3 years. And so now we're in year 5, and now it's like, okay, we can actually pay ourselves now. So yeah, totally understand what you're saying.
Everyone says that the first 3 to 5 years of a company, you cannot expect to pay yourself. And it makes
Right.
completely sense when you're doing it, because you have to make people trust that you're staying business, that it's actually meaningful for society, that there are people to buy your products.
Yeah.
It's quite funny sometimes. And that brings me to the next thing, which is this kind of development happens, of course, with our own good ideas, but also with talking to people that has different backgrounds than ourselves, which means lawyers, business owners, people working in diplomacy, creating a good advisory board with people around you that you can ask questions. Also looking into how other companies works. These kind of things is just so important, as long as you don't copy. Please.
Like having a business plan, you mean?
Like, yeah, having a good business plan, but also listen to people around you that has seen things happen somehow. Like people 20 years older that can see the value in your project and deeply wants to help.
Yeah.
That can be really great. So, for example, sometimes you can be so scared of inviting people into, for example, your board, because at least myself, I felt like I could potentially lose my project if there's people coming in and changing things.
Yeah, sure.
But you have to let that go if you want to grow, and then make sure to legally protect your rights of intelligence and your right of concept that you can protect yourself with, while inviting people into to really invest themselves in your project. So these kind of things, I think, is, find a good lawyer friend. If you don't have one, begin to hang out in a cafe near a university for lawyers. Like, I don't know, do something to find friends outside of music, because musicians for now are not educated in running businesses, at least in our education. We need somebody who has that kind of background.
So you were talking a bit about letting go so that you could grow. Can you expand on that?
I think if you want people to help, sometimes they have to feel that they also have ownership. It's very important for them. If they have to invest beyond a paycheck, or even for no paycheck, then they have to feel that it's in some way giving something back to them. And it can be in the way of use whatever you do to invite their network for them to network over art, for example. But it can also be in the way that you find somebody working in economy that finally gets to work with a more creative field that they lack in their everyday. And then on a part-time, they get to be inspired by whatever you're doing. So then they want to help. And in order for them to want to help, sometimes being in a board of that gives them value. So these kind of things I think is very important to think a bit about how can you serve while also grow your own business. Um,
Yeah, I think this is really important, and I recognize a lot in this for myself because I'm artistic director of a concert series here. And when I first had to make my board, then one of the original members of the board also wanted to come in and start programming. And I was like, well, no, like I started this series because I want to pick the programs and I want to
mm,
choose the musicians that I'm working with. And I was doing it strategically where I was inviting people from Paris and Cologne and Amsterdam, and then I would get invited to go play with them in those cities. So for me, it
mm,
was a way to expand my network. And so when people come in and they start like, oh, well, let's do it like this, and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
yeah,
like, I mean, how do I navigate this? And so, yeah, and while I mean, I really love what you're
yeah,
saying about ownership because
mm,
eventually with that person, it couldn't go forward anymore because they
mm,
really wanted control over the programming, and so
yeah,
then we had a conflict of job roles.
mm,
But then luckily now the current board that I have, we have much more open conversations around like how can we support, who's invested, who like job descriptions in a sense of who's
mm,
responsible for what,
yeah,
and everyone feels like they're being a contribution. And at the
yeah,
end of the day, we're creating a beautiful concert. And that's really what everyone's coming together to do is to celebrate great music, great
mm,
people, bringing people together, which sounds like it's the values of French Academy as well.
yeah.
So, how are you giving other people ownership while still retaining your artistic vision of the festival?
Well, I think it comes with little by little by beginning to feel your own authority in a way. It's a mix of things. First of all, by adding people to your team that has different qualities with yourself, you also remove the potential fear of losing what you're doing because they would never suggest to do your program because that's not their
Mm,
competence or skill.
hmm hmm
So already inviting people who doesn't do the same is already a natural, nice synergy. I think it's very important that you also, before going into working together, like you can go on Google how to clear each other's values before going into group work.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about what is your values because that's often what makes people conflict at some point. Like for example, if you think friendship is super important and that you love working with friends, and another one say, I will never work with friends because I'm scared to ruin my friendships. Then when one begins to invite a lot of friends in, the other one might disagree and it will turn into like, even though you love the project and you want to do the same thing, this could be just a game over for the collab.
I love that you said that because when I invited my current chairman of my board, he's a former piano student. He's 70. I love him,
Yeah.
Frank, if you're listening. And he's like, I don't want to come on your board because we're so close and I don't want to risk our
Mm.
friendship, our relationship. He's kind of like my Dutch dad. And I was like, that's crazy to me because this is only going to bring us closer. But both of us were right in the sense that there have been conflicts. There have been
Mm.
moments of tension where it was like, okay, this is affecting our relationship. And so
Mm.
we've had to learn to navigate conflict. But I mean, how has that been for you learning to navigate conflict? I believe there's always a way forward if both people are open and willing to
Yes.
talk about things.
Yes, that's the most important thing. But that's also when you clear values, you ask each other, like, how do you react in conflict? Because I do that with our new, like, everyone we get in that is in a closer contact with the board because we all react differently. Some simply know they don't like conflicts in general. Like, nobody likes to have a conflict, but they are more prone to, like, just shy away or not talk or so then at least you will know it in the collab before you even start. Dealing with conflict, I think what I learn more and more is the importance, like even especially when you're good friends, to have things written on paper.
Mm.
Like contracts, contracts, contracts. And even though you seem like a crazy person, are you like, really? We have to do a contract? Are you sure it's not too much? Actually, it's just because it's not so much the contract paper in itself, it's the conversation you have when you make the contract. It's like,
That's interesting.
how many hours do you want to put into this? Because that's natural, that's something you put in a contract. Remote, on-site, what would you like to do as roles? And what is your role? What will your day-to-day task be? That's things you put in a contract. And what would you potentially like to have back for what you do? If I'm not paying you, would you like to have your picture on a website? Would you like to have a social media post, collab, these kind of things? That all gets out in the open when you do these kind of things, and it's just very healthy.
I think
Um,
what you're sharing right now is so crucial. And obviously, Deanna and I, we've been working together now. TFA is 5 years old this month.
wow,
So we've
congrats.
had 5 years. Thank you. We've had 5 years of being best friends and co-founders. And so we've had to navigate, I would say, a minimal amount of conflict, mostly because Deanna's amazing. But more recently, there have been things that come up. So I totally love what you said about it's not about the contract, it's about the conversation you have to get
Yeah.
things down because then you're asking really great questions like, her and I, we came to a point where like we really had to agree, how many hours are we committing to? What are we committing to? What are we accountable for? How are we going to hold each other accountable without having a horrible, tense conflict, which we like luckily have never had, but it's like sometimes somebody has dropped the ball and things need to be addressed. And both of us, if you just want to be friends, you're like, oh no, we'll just shove that under the carpet and like pretend. But then, I have a business coach, and so she's always being like, KPIs, you got to track, you have to know the data. Like, is it happening or not? Is the content going out or not? If it's not, this is a problem. This is why you're not selling. This is why your membership's not filling up. It's like being strategic. And then you have to really face the data, and you're like, oh no, this means that I need to have a hard conversation with like, okay, something's not working between us. One thing that's helped us is like, okay, it's us against the problem, and it's not us versus each other.
Yeah.
So coming back to what you're mentioning about teamwork, I'd love for you to share a bit about like, because I know you work with your husband. So I mean, it's obviously, not to overshare, as much as you're comfortable with, but like, how is that for you are you guys doing contracts? You're writing things down?
We don't do contracts, but we have been doing clarification of roles, and we do it on an ongoing thing. And sometimes there has to be a little bit of cleaning up. Because, of course, when you're in a couple, it's so easy to like, can you do this now? Yeah, okay, sure. Can you do this now? And then, we end up also working 24/7.
Yeah, I was going to say work boundaries in the evening. I was wondering, how do you guys do that? Yeah.
We have made sometimes, like, as a ground rule, after 6 o'clock, office is closed. So then we don't stop work.
I love that.
That's a ground rule, but
yeah, okay.
Then there
not always in real life. Yeah, okay.
Today, for example, we are going to launch our website for applications and everything. And that means, of course, yesterday evening was until late evening to really fix it, because sometimes you can postpone and postpone and postpone. And, sometimes you just have to do it.
Yes.
Even though it goes over normal working hours. And so these kind of things, I can really recognize what you said about your friends, and that you said this thing that you are together against the issue and not each other. That I also can recognize these kind of conversations sometimes, because it's super important to remember that it really doesn't help putting guilt on each other's shoulders. Sometimes it's about a little reconstruction or reflection about, can we optimize something here? Is there a way in our communication we need to optimize so that you feel more motivated to do it all by yourself without me even saying anything? Or, sometimes also one person is more into being in control, like checking up on things, which can stress the other one out.
Yeah.
Not going to mention name. But like these kind of things can be issues. And then you have to deal with finding new systems and better communication to do these kind of things. And then I'm going to, of course, mention that it's, as you said, you have a business coach. It's so important to invest in support for yourself. Like,
yes.
I have, of course, in the last 10 years, I've done therapy. A very, very big and important investment I've done in myself that I will never stop recommending it.
I'm so glad you're sharing this. I'm happy to hear we have a lot of aligned thoughts on empowering others, on leadership, on ownership. We have 2 girls working for us now, and today we have our staff meeting. So it's like, how do we empower them? How do we make them really feel, and I think we already have done this, but like, it's always on my mind, like we're building a culture at the Fearless Artist. And so how can we transfer this culture where they represent us wherever they're going, and they're not just putting in their number of hours per month in exchange for content or whatever. It's like, no, like we understand the vision behind TFA. And so the vision behind the French Connection of bringing people together and sharing these values, and what you had said earlier about, leaving the small country, this, different mindset you learned when you're going to France. I mean, obviously I recognize that Canadian living abroad for almost 12 years. So like that is so powerful to have other perspectives, other cultures, other influences, other pedagogy. And so where do you see this going? Like, what is if we go back to the big dream, what would you like to see French Connection Academy become?
Well, we are in a big situation of development right now, because actually I found this amazing guy. He's called Martin Melchiorsen Andersen, very Danish name. He is going to make this big, like, Creative Europe application. And of course, it's limited what I can say about what's going to happen in that. But the idea is that we will have a lot of partners in different countries, and that we'll begin to be able to offer French Connection Academy in mini versions, going to other countries and other institutions.
Cool.
I'm really excited about it. And also that the idea is that is a very holistic package of like master classes with instruments, but also financial help, law, branding, storytelling, these kind of things. And we come out and then we do this full thing for a weekend, and then we move on to the next country, the
That
next
sounds
city.
so fun. Like a tour.
It's gonna be a
Yeah.
fun tour. So that's at least on the drawing board for now, and we will begin, before we do this Creative Europe thing, to begin to offer that through our website, that institutions can contact us for these things. And we do this to have more, I would call it outreach. So it's not only the students that comes all the way to Denmark, but that we can also offer this to a wider amount of students during the year. And then also we would like to create more of a community, so that year round our students would have access to materials such as, for example, this podcast and interviews with important people in the cultural world, so we can have more information as musicians about other things than how to play your instrument.
I literally just had someone write me today and say, "What do you guys actually learn at conservatory?" And I was like, "Don't get me started." I was like, "They didn't teach us anything for after school." It is changing. I can't keep saying that because I'm on faculty at a university where I teach entrepreneurship, so it is changing, and like super happy. And but the interesting issue now is that the new students don't recognize the importance of this subject. So I just started my brand new year ones last week, and already I got like 5 messages of, is this course mandatory? I've got rehearsal. I can't make it. Should I, do I have to be there? Is it graded? And I'm like, oh, I got to nip this in the bud right now. So I was like, listen, I promise you, this is the most important course that you will take at this institution besides your main instrument lessons.
Yeah.
Like, either you get this information from me now for free, or you pay me in 10 years for me to teach it to you at TFA, but you're going to have to learn this. So like, please just come to class, so it's interesting because all of us on the other side are like advocating for like, we need to teach this in university, but maybe it's more like, no, we need to teach the 18-year-olds, like, this is so important right now, even though the focus is so strongly on like just being the best violinist that you can be. So it's interesting for me to...
I would say there's a bit too, because we also see that students like practice and never go out, and the socializing is like an extra. And I remember also hanging out to the conservatory until midnight sometimes, and having this kind of feeling cool because you really go into it and you really practice. I practiced a lot also. I was a big perfectionist back then, not in the good way also. And I think what many students, that's also something we really advocate in FCA. Remember that among your fellow students, there will be a good handful of them that will be your potential job employer, like being in charge of a festival, academy. Like my former fellow students can potentially be employed in my academy, for example. So it's important to socialize.
The 2 girls that work for us were my students at Code Arts. So that's exactly
it's
proving
exactly the situation. And that's exactly enough to go out of the practice room and hang out, or go to a cinema club or something, do something beyond the working all the time. And I think the more students see that, that's also what we say in our academy, like, this is real life. We try to give you real life, which is social, which is very, very dependent on how active you are in approaching others and asking each other favors, information, learning from each other. Like, social skills are so important. And I think really we have to demystify, because for many years it's these big names, you have the big maestro, or you have the biggest solo, you have Hilary Hahn, or Hilary Hahn is a good example because she's
we love
demystifying.
Hilary. Yes, she is.
Very nice.
Yeah, 100 days of practice.
Yeah. But these big idols have always been there, and if you don't become a big soloist, it's a bit too bad, You have to feel a bit shameful about that. You just teach. I'm like, what is that? Like, we need every single musician out in the community. We need everyone, and the world has never needed artists more than today, where there's war and instability and weird social media, and I don't know, we have to be there. We have to be in contact as many as possible. And the more musicians that has jobs, private concerts, teach, are in contact with other parts of society, the better. We need it. It's absolutely important, and it's a huge success. No matter what career, if you can live from it, if you are enjoying it, if people feel that you're serving your community, it's a huge success.
I couldn't agree more. You put it so beautifully.
And it's
Thank
not,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Thank you
welcome.
for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
No,
wish
I mean,
somebody told me that 10 years ago. Like,
no, I know. That was beautifully put.
well,
Emily, thank
thank
you
you.
for sharing so much about your French Connection Academy. I know applications are open today, so everybody
Yes.
listening who wants to go check it out, go check out the website, which is
FrenchConnectionAcademy.com.
perfect. Nice and easy. Go check it out. How can people find you and follow you?
On my Instagram, so my name is Emilie Callesen, username on Instagram, and there I also will begin to post more advice, and also I do some consulting. So if you would like to have receive some mentoring, I also give hours of that.
Perfect.
Yes.
So we always finish our episodes with one action point, one thing that our audience can take away. Do you have something in mind you'd like to share?
Oh, I think if you have a dream that is really a big dream that you want, remember that nobody arrives to it themselves. Most
Mm,
likely, you need to gather a team, even if it is to become a big soloist. You might need somebody to do your storytelling. You need supports and personal development. Everyone. So
yeah,
go for it.
amazing. Thank you so much. This has been such a great episode, and looking forward to seeing more about the festival in July when it comes out. And
Thank you so
we'll be
much.
happy to share what's going on with you guys.
It's been
Okay.
really great. Thank you so much
Yeah, my
for
pleasure. Okay, everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Fearless Artist. Be fearless.